Welcome, this is Jeremiah. We're going to we're going to get into today, we're going to we're going to go on a trek. Today we're going to look at the apostasy and we're going to look at, I'm going to probably call this Apostasy 2022. It's only a few videos. I'm getting to the point and we're not going to cover the waterfront. For those of you interested, you can go to my previous channel, Jeremiah Michael Pearson on YouTube. At YouTube or on YouTube, whatever you're going to say, it's YouTube, me on YouTube. And you can go there and you can find a lot of videos I have pertaining to the apostasy and a lot of what we call in America negativity. So, but I decided to make a quick lesson for this channel to just give you a quick look into what the apostasy means. I've been referring to it and we've been talking about it here, pardon me, off and on here in beauty. I will get right back to beauty. We're going to Solomon probably, we'll probably go to Proverbs chapter 3 or 4. So I'll take a look today. But for now, I want to give a quick lesson on the apostasy. And of course, like I said, I have tons of videos on the falling away and not accepting deliverance, which is 127 or so. We have, you might want to say faithful and a couple of other lessons I have. The greedy, I have the greedy bunch up there. We have how a rich man is saved, and of course we have the overarching words, which are false apostles and stuff like that. So it's a one big ball of wax is all it is. And there's no need to be confused. It just means error. It means people who are going the wrong way for different reasons, okay? I mean, I have false apostles for 30 on my previous channel and so forth. We have subverted. That should be 65 on the previous channel. As I start getting back into the previous channel, for those of you who are interested, this is in all ages, primarily teenagers and, or 10 to 110 here. This is not so much for children at all. However, they can listen to this, but they're not going to be that much interested. We don't have any animals, and we don't have so-and-so, and la, 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 la. We have just a lot of Bible study here. However, I like teenagers to get involved. That's why this channel is available for all ages. I think if you're 10, 11, 12 years old and you're interested in lots of Bible study, that you should have that accessible to you, and that you should take time to get into this living bread. And you don't need to get into repentance and baptism and things of this nature when you are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. That's for primarily adults. Okay? Like my previous channel is primarily for adults. I will put this brief lesson up with a few videos on Apostasy 2022, and we're going to make it light. We're not going to get into a lot of things that the apostasy, at the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter for the apostasy is a very, very ugly situation, and we're not going to get to the heart of the matter, so to speak, such as talking about how the apostasy is very similar to those in the tribulation period, why they're in the tribulation period, what kind of activities are they going to do in the tribulation period, which is what they're doing now, which we're not going to talk about, which means we're not going to get into a whole lot of things that are funky, as we say back in the day. We're going to keep this Apostasy 2022 lesson quick and mild. Let's put it that way, okay? I do not want to get into details pertaining to what an abomination is in terms of things that are horrible and all this kind of stuff. One of the main things that we consider an abomination, of course, is for you to select something to adore besides Father. And that's called idolatry. Thou shalt have no other gods besides me. The number one command. So that we are here to focus on Daddy comes first and second and third. That's what that means. Okay? Daddy comes first, second, third, fourth, and And that's just the way this is. It's not that hard to figure out. That we're here primarily to cultivate an atmosphere whereby that Father knows best, and Father, whatever Daddy says, you basically keep your mouth shut and you listen to what Daddy says here. That's what this is about. I'll never forget the time I was in Rolling Hills over there in north of San Pedro, California, where a lot of Chinese shipping comes in and so forth. And I would drive up there in the same car I have now. And Betty is still going, like the old hoopty out there, the car. But I would drive up there on Western, where San Pedro meets Rolling Hills, so to speak. I think that's where it meets. But Western goes all the way to the water, to the Pacific Ocean, where you get a nice view. They have a viewpoint there, and so forth. Interesting place in America. You can get a really good look at the Pacific Ocean, which you don't. Well, you can get a good look at the Pacific Ocean along the Pacific Coast Highway and various places where the mountains or the hills meet the ocean. You can get a really high perspective, a high altitude, and but anyway, I used to go there and hang out there, and of course we are here to look at. Well, let me finish what I was talking about. There was a pastor there, and the church was right up the street there. You go up the hill just a little bit, where you go a little higher and get a little high, a slightly higher view. I used to teach K through 12 right up that road there. Had a nice park there, and a YMCA, a boys club, something. I used to go hang out with the shoot baskets there, shoot the hoops on weekends and so forth. But there's a coffee shop there, and I was talking with a pastor that I didn't know well at all, but I knew a little bit about his church. But there was a gentleman there arguing with him, and the gentleman was really giving him a hard time. And I thought to myself, what a tough job it is to be a pastor, and to be a Bible teacher and an evangelist is really rather easy compared to dealing with people who like to argue for no reason. They don't really want to be logical or reasonable. They just feel like being nasty. That's what people generally. I just feel like being a bad person. I have no grounds to argue with you, and I know it. I just feel like being a problem. And wow, he was very patient, and I can learn from his patience. Knowing me, I would have probably told him after a few complaints, dude, we'll see you in church next week, and do me a favor. Do us all a favor. Be quiet and submit yourself unto the Lord. You're causing a problem here. You're disrupting the church progress. It's okay to ask a few questions, but what you're doing is you're taking up time, and you're really heading into some dangerous territory. Obviously, God does not mind you asking a few questions. But if you're going to be somewhat of a badger and a wolverine, it might not be good for you in the long run. That's a bad idea. But let's get into this, which is part of what the lesson is today, actually. Paul says that there are a lot of twisted arguments. People like to argue all the time, and he told Timothy to avoid them, and this is what people do who are not really devoted to Jesus Christ, but they're hanging around the church and so forth. They're walking through the church. They have no plans on staying unless you comply with their perspective on the way things ought to be, and that being the wrong way. So let's get going, which is the lesson today, which is Apostacy 2022, and I'm going to first start talking. I'm going to talk about momentary apostasy. I think that's the first thing I want to talk about. This is Jeremiah with New Covenant. We will probably go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and a few other scriptures I have noted here. Okay? I'm going to do a lot of scripture popping without going to the scripture, probably in this lesson. Okay, let's get going. Let's get going. It does save time. I have beauty ready for this afternoon or this evening, and we're not going to get to beauty today for my schedule. And beauty is going to look at Proverbs, and then we're going to probably go to Isaiah. So remember, beauty is the theme of the year. However, we will get away from beauty and then come back to beauty. We're going to, but we'll always come back to beauty after we've kind of danced around a little bit in the Bible. Okay? We went to this category, that category, and I have my 52 categories here that I'm going to start employing more and more in the 10th month of this year, 2022. And I'm already starting to reference my old covenant playlist, my old channel. I have almost 150 or so lessons. And that's why we're building here, and that's why I'm slowing down a little bit and getting back into the 52, the 7 points of beauty, and getting into the previous playlist on the other channel so that everything meshes together. Now, all of this meshing together and so forth is going to be done in a much more lighter perspective so that young teenagers and so forth can watch the videos. We're not, in my previous video, my previous channel, which was my first channel, I spent a lot of time getting into a lot of things that are a little over the top pertaining to young Americans and so forth, which is getting into a lot of what the world is doing specifically. What are they actually doing out there in the world right now? Well, for Bible study for all ages, we don't want to do that. We only want to touch on it and let it go. We don't want any details, no pictures, no images. I have a few images on my first channel there, Jeremiah Michael Pearson, which show you what's going on in the world and so forth and how bad the world is. But this year, we're going to only touch on how bad the world is, and 80% or more is going to be on beauty this year. When I get done with Psalms, which I just finished for now, Proverbs, and Isaiah has a lot of beauty in it. Isaiah has a lot of beauty like the book of Psalms does. As a matter of fact, Isaiah might have more beauty than Mr. David, our head poet. So, and as you know, the Master, our lovable Jesus Christ, who we serve, his conversation, our Father's conversation, is usually, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I love you again, and I have nothing else to say. Why don't you stay and keep on loving me? They say they have a lot of hipster songs back in the day where the main theme is keep on loving me, and that's really what the Master says at the end of his ministry to the disciples and to us, which is, I love you a lot, and I'm going to make a place for you to stay, and I want you to stay in my love, which is to continue to be humble and to keep evil out of your life. And if you do that, I'm going to come for you. In very simple terms, and of course the Master says he loves you, I don't know how many times in John 14, and he says it again in 15 about 3 or 4 more times. So he basically says about 10 times that he loves you over and over again. You have come to him, and you love the truth, and you love reality. And you're a caring person, and you're honest, and you're not greedy, and you're not proud. That's what we call a winner in the church. Now, for those of you who have successfully accepted this lifestyle, in these teachings, we have a winner. Now, let's get to what we call losers for a moment here. Now, this is going to be brief, and this is not going to be in depth as to what the people who are going bad are doing. One of the things about talking about the apostasy is that the apostasy gets into a lot of really bad behaviors. Things that people do that are really, really, really bad. And it's part of teaching the apostasy. And what I'm going to do is give you a light perspective, just a quick glance, without getting into detail as to what the people are doing who are in the apostasy, which is the same thing that Paul says are the people that are going into the tribulation period. The people in the tribulation period have the same behavior as the people who are going to miss the rapture, who walk through the church or who have heard about the gospel. Because it's woe to you, Chorazin and Bethesda, who didn't respond to the gospel, and it's woe to you who did start to respond, who did not respond properly. And let me explain what that means. What that means is that people who've heard about the gospel and didn't do anything are in the same boat as the people who heard about the gospel, were curious, and didn't do anything about it in a concrete fashion. They walked through the house, but they did not buy the house. It's the same thing as looking at a house for sale and walking through the house for sale. If you stood in front of a house for sale and you walked through the house for sale, there's no difference if you didn't buy the house. That's my point. There's no difference whether you walked in front of a church and you didn't go in and you were curious and you walked through and walked right out. John said they left us because they were not of us. Some people walk through. They're curious, and that was their perspective. That's how they saw the experience of encountering Christianity, commands from Jesus Christ, etc. And that's what the apostasy really is. It's people who are curious, but they're not ready to go the whole nine. And it doesn't matter whether they were outside the church curious or they walked through. There's no difference. It has the same net results. Okay? That's my point. Okay? I'll be right back. I'm going to take a break. Okay, we're right back to action here. The book of Acts. These are our own book of Acts, our own actions, and that is the action to go into all the world and to preach the gospel to all men, and to, as Jesus told them on a couple of occasions, what to do as far as getting out there in the world and go. G-O means go. Now, it's time for us to go. We're going, Paul said study. That's what we're doing. We're doing exactly what the man told us to do. Now, the apostasy, as I mentioned, gets into a lot of what we call funky stuff, but we will not get into that. It's very difficult to mention the apostasy or this without getting into how bad it is. It's because it's really a bad situation and some of the details. But I'm going to skip that on this particular lesson in brevity. So let's get going as we look at Apostasy 2022. And what does that mean? That means that we're, first of all, going to look at momentary apostasy. The word apostasy basically means a strong position outside of the law. It means a position that's outside of what you were supposed to do. To put it in American verbiage. I am an American, so I use a lot of American verbiage. And that is that you got out of it, as they say in England. In England, they say, get out of it. That's a very good way of putting it grammatically. Get out of it. A lot of people have gotten out of it. And we're going to talk about momentary apostasy first. And that's the best scenario for someone who is falling away, because apostasy means to take a position that is not proper, such as my lesson I have in my previous channel called Subverted. In other words, you used to have a perspective that was straight, 12 o'clock. You were governed properly by what you were supposed to listen to and abide by, okay? But then you got tilted. And when you got tilted, that's when you were subverted and undermined, and you got away from the foundation that you needed to maintain. I just looked at Paul. He said to, what did he say? Hold, H-O-L-D. Okay, it's the same thing as what we just referenced with the Master in John 14, which is remain in my love. It's the same idea where you are holding on to what you need to hold on to for success. What do you need for success? How are you going to enter into the church and be a successful listener so that you will comply adequately? I was talking with a Bible teacher the other day. He got lost right away when I just mentioned. And that's not good. Because you need to know as a convert that there are requirements on you based upon you loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And those requirements are not Mickey Mouse out there in outer space. They're very specific orders that you're going to have to listen to, and you're going to have to agree with, and you're going to have to fulfill. That's why the Bible says to fulfill the royal law of freedom. You're going to have to complete what you need to do. And the first thing you need to do is to come to Jesus and to acknowledge him as the only begotten Son and the death, burial, resurrection, and the forgiveness of sins in the gospel, that it's good news, and that's where we start your compliance. And that is evidence that you want to submit to God and become an Israelite. Because an Israelite means I submitted to what I was told to do. As God told Joshua, have I not commanded you? That's it. That's hard to figure out. It's not. I was talking with a Bible teacher here a couple of months ago, and he didn't seem to understand what I was saying. I said, don't you understand the Bible basics? You're supposed to be a Bible teacher. What happened to you? Well, he could be part of this apostasy or momentary falling away where they're rejecting the simple pillars of the building. They're knocking the pillars down, and the building's going to fall down on them. You can't knock the pillars and the walls down. The ceiling is going to come down on your head. But the Bible says that God has hewn out 7 pillars. You need to get into what the basics are and don't lose it based upon somebody on television or anything else, because that's how you're revealing that you're falling away. By not holding on to the walls of the building. You can't knock the pillars away and expect to be safe. The more you knock the pillars away, the more the ceiling is going to probably come down on your head. And Christianity is an endeavor whereby you're going to have to use your head and get to the 12th grade grammar, mathematical perspective so that you can be a winner here. Kindergarten is over. I don't know how many people I've been counseling recently where they want to do everything from a kindergarten perspective. And it's not as though they don't have the ability to employ 8th grade math and 8th grade grammar, so you can identify a pronoun, whether it's indefinite or it's demonstrative, so that you can understand the basics of A, B, C, D. I don't want to understand A, B, C, D. We have a loser on our hands because you want to put time to go on Amazon and tiki-taki or something, but you don't have the energy to use the same mind that you use for baseball, keeping track of every baseball player on the card and what their batting average is. When it comes to simple Bible study, you say, "Oh no, it's too much for me," or something. And I get that all the time, and that's a part of the apostasy. Apostasy means falling away and getting away from the things that you need to hold on to in your Christian life. You can't let them go. You can't let somebody knock on your door and tell you to remove one of the columns of your building. It's going to fall on you. They knock on my door periodically. Hello, Jesus is not God. He's a mini God. And you need another name. Yahuwah, Yahweh, all this. You need another name. As a matter of fact, that name is more important than Jesus. And if you open the door and let those people in your house, they're going to knock the columns out of your building, and the building is going to crash on your head. It's going to crash on your salvation. That's why John said, don't greet people and wish them Godspeed who knock on your door talking to the women folk in his second letter. People come knocking on your door bringing you the devil, tell them to get away from your door. Because you're playing with fire when you play with messing around with the pillars of Christianity pertaining to sound doctrine and what you need to know from an 8th grade perspective in America. I get it all the time where people don't want to go to the 8th grade. They don't want to have a booklet out. They don't want to have we used to have the peachy folders, and they don't want to have biology and math and then take it home, and they hope that things are going to work out for them. It's not going to work out for you. That's the parable of the sower. The parable of the sower goes back to why Jesus Christ called his disciples disciples. You're going to have some discipline here to be a winner. Now, you don't have to study the Bible as much as I do, but you're going to have to get the basics down, and I'm going to help you with basics. Let's get to the lesson germane. Apostasy 2022. What does it mean? It means people are getting away from what they were supposed to hold on to, or they rejected what they need to grab. It's only 2 ways of looking at this. And let me hammer this on one more time. You either rejected initially living bread, or you started to get into living bread and you put a wall up to living bread. Only 2 ways of looking at this. That's all. You never had the bread on your table, or you had it on your table and you started pushing it off. The living bread. Almost everything comes back to sound doctrine and living bread. That is category 11 here. Category 24, I call it war, because it's a war for you to eat living bread. The devil tells people, no living bread. Either outside of the church or inside of the church, no living bread. I went to a church one time where the Bible teacher said, we don't want living bread here. That's basically what he was saying, which means he's an apostasy teacher. Okay? Now, here we are out in the wild. We're all out in the wild. I want to focus on Apostasy 2022, falling away from what you need and what God has for you. Who knows that there's 1,000 ways to do that. There's 1,000 ways to reject what you need from your Bible. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. What we're going to say is, the bottom line is that, once again, I'll say one more time, you stood in front of the church and you pushed away what you need to do. That's called rebellion. Or you came into the church and you walked through and you saw the living bread and you kicked it off the table. I don't want that living bread. Get it out of here. I want to hang around the church, but I don't want to eat living bread and quack, 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 quack. That's what we have. Now, having made that foundation, let's go to Peter now and talk about momentary apostasy, which is the hope of all Bible teachers and students such as me, such as I. And my goal is to get people away from and out of and emerging from the apostasy. And the way you get people out of falling into the pit is to give them the equipment so they can get themselves right out of there. Because an apostasy or a falling away can be a momentary or it can be a long-term problem. Okay? It can be a challenge for me as a Bible teacher and a student to get that person who's fallen into the apostasy or the falling away or doing the wrong thing. It may be for 1 day or 2 days. And then they get right out of it. Such as Peter, which we're going to look at later, and of course the Galatians. Both of them are headed towards an apostasy state of mind and an apostasy position, which is falling away, shrinking back, shipwreck, offended, ashamed, and all the terms that are applicable to the state of mind of an apostasy individual. Okay? I'll be right back as we get into what our hope is first of all, is a person's going to get into this and they're going to get out of it right away. And there's no better example than Peter. Okay? Okay, I'll be right back. Maranatha.